So let's talk about exactly what forecasting is and how we can use it in operations. Forecasting is basically predicting the future. We're using a process of predicting an event. And so, truthfully, it's the underlying basis of all business decisions. What your production is going to be, what your inventory is going to be, personnel, facilities, that's all going to be based on what your forecast is. You're going to have a lot different inventory, personnel, and facility needs if you are making 1,500 widgets as opposed to 10 million widgets every year. And if you assume that you're going to make 10 million widgets and you only do 10,000 widgets, you're probably going out of business because you've gone way above what you needed to do to actually sell that amount of material. And so what are some of the forecasting approaches? One of the first ones is qualitative methods. And it's used when it's vague. You don't know what's going on. If you've got a new product, new technology, you're kind of just winging it. Now, winging it, you're making, as you can see here, it says intuition and experience. It's what in engineering we would call, we're taking a swag at it. Swag stands for sophisticated wild-ass guess. Yes, you're guessing at it, but you're using what you know about things to come up with better than just, it's not just a wild guess, because there is some purpose, some knowledge, some experience behind it. And so we have things like jury executive opinion, sales force composition, the Delphi method market survey. So jury executive opinions, you pull opinions of high-level experts, and you sometimes augment those with some statistical models. The Delphi method is basically you just get a panel of experts and you start asking them questions. You ask all of them the same questions, you base it off that. Sales force composition, you estimate from individual salespersons, and you talk to them, and it's all reviewed for reasonableness, and then you kind of aggregate the data. And a market survey is basically you ask the customer, if I make this, are you going to buy it? So it's a pretty simple kind of things. So the more the quantitative ones, this is what we can use when we have a stable situation with historical data. So existing products and current technology. Things like we talked about Disney. They have tons of data about what's going on, and they're using that data to predict the future. And this is going to involve mathematical techniques. So this is where we're going to be setting up equations. We're going to be looking at data and projecting the future based off of the data. And so as we look at it, we've got, for quantitative approaches, we've got 5 different ways that we can sit there and look at it. And so we've got time series models, but then we also have what's called an associative model. And so for the time series model, we have the naive approach, which is just basically, hey, the weather tomorrow is going to be what the weather was today. You have moving averages, exponential smoothing, seasonality. And then the associative model is regression, and that's a heavy-duty Excel one. That's actually a lot of fun. We're going to be taking a look at that one. It says in the lab, but you'll be getting it within these lectures here. And so what's the difference between these two? Well, time series forecasting is you look at a set of events evenly spaced numerical data, and you're observing the response at regular intervals. So we're just going to look at what it was in January, February, March, April, May, and we're going to base off that. The thing with time series forecasting is the forecasting is 100% based on past values. There's no other variables. You are doing everything based on this is what's happened in the past, and we're assuming that it's going to happen similarly in the future. Associative forecasting is when there are multiple independent variables that you can use to predict the changes in the dependent variable. One of the examples that I've used before when we've taught MBA 690 is house price. There are a lot of things that go into your house price. There's the location, the square footage, how many bathrooms you got. All of these variables change the house price in one way or another. So how do you build a model where you take that into account? Well, this is where we use linear regression. And it's basically we take all of this variable data that we've got, and linear regression forms an equation based on the different variables in it and how they interact with the actual end product. Now, linear regression is a big, heavy-duty statistical method. Fortunately, as you're going to see, Excel makes it pretty easy to do. The thing with Excel, though, is you've got to know when the computer's lying to you or when the computer's kind of confused. And so that's one of the things we're going to go over is how do we set this up so we can actually interpret that we have the correct linear regression technique or the linear regression model that comes out of our Excel.